All right. Greetings and salutations, Focus Up family. Welcome to the April 6th, 2024 installment of the Sunday School with Charles X. This show is all politics, global and domestic. We thank you for tuning in with us live on YouTube, various other platforms, or catching up with us on replay. We ask that you click that like, that subscribe, that bell, and share to support and maintain your weekly, or should I say your monthly Sunday school fix. I am Mr. Nice Guy, nice as in the word saint spelled backwards, but the star of this show is Brother Charles X. Now we have Brother Victor Freeman as a guest on this show, and the opinions on this show may be controversial, and you'll hear things that sound like praise of polarizing figures such as Donald Trump or Joe Biden, but we are not endorsing anybody. Our politics are not party based. We lean on policy here. We stand on blackness. So without further ado, I pass it off to you, Brother Charles X.
My brothers, man, I appreciate everyone being here today for this discussion. I definitely appreciate, Brother Vic, who I got the opportunity to meet last week on a Focus Up show. And, the one thing that I was always big about this show, as you can remember, Mr. Nice, is that, I did not want this show to be some sort of echo chamber, and something that was for just a bunch of sycophants that just agree with my various takes that I have on subjects. I wanted to hear the flip side, be involved in discussion, with the flip side, of current affairs and various decisions that are being made, in particular in the political spectrum, an arena that is impacting our lives. And so, without doubt, just the short time I've known, Brother Vic, he definitely emanates the fact that he's going to be, giving some pushback, and then I think that's going to definitely give us some very lively discussion. And Brother Nice, of course, you've always been that pushback person as well, too. But let's really just discuss some of various topics that are important, to the people.
That's what's up. So let's get on with it, brother. Let's get into it. We want to first. We talked about this. This show is the war on woke. And woke is a big thing for I guess maybe probably both sides of the equation. But what you got to say about this, brother? What's going on? Where did woke start? Because we feel like woke has been sort of like taken and stretched to mean something else. But where are the beginnings of it?
Well, brother, can we do this real quick? Let's give Brother Vic an opportunity to introduce himself, to the audience, and give us a little understanding about him, his background, because he has a very interesting background, has a strong sense of accomplishments that he's done, both past and present. So let's give him the opportunity if you don't mind.
Thank you, brothers. Definitely appreciate you. I'm really looking forward to again being on the show here, talking about various issues. I am passionate in regards to the things that I believe in. I don't really see myself as either a conservative or a liberal, or I believe myself to be really just a free thinker. I'm a person who originally grew up in New York. I do have a book. It's called Bowen. And then in addition to that, I've spent a career, ironically, in the corporate sector, specifically within pharmaceuticals. I've also been a teacher. I actually taught English as well as social studies in the Bronx, New York. So one of the things that I really pride myself in being is somebody who will look at things independently and with really scrutinized eyes with less emotion. But I really love the energy Brother Charles brings to these conversations, as well as Mr. Nice Guy. I mean, you guys definitely make sure that you're being organic for one, and you're providing true candor to the audience, and that's what I'm looking to bring today on the show.
Thank you very much.
That's brilliant, brother. Thank you for sharing that.
So again, and we should probably point out. I mean, I think I was clear in the opening, but this is not a liberal show. This is not a conservative show. Brother Charles X and myself, we both probably identify. You said right of center. some of the arguments that I make will probably you will interpret as being liberal, because again, I have a difference of policy of what I believe as far as wrong and right, and then what I believe is a policy for a democracy. So even though there's other people involved that may not share my concept of how things should go, I still believe in their voice, and I think that there should be some inclusion. So, again, there's a difference between my religious perception of things, and then there's also my political perception as far as understanding that, look, I'm not trying to be a dictator to force everybody to see through my lens or to function how I require them to function. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I'm going to do no matter what. And I will try to show respect to the next person in doing that. So that's where I'm coming from. And Victor, you said that, look, you voted for both sides. So again, this is not going to be a liberal show. It's not going to be a conservative show. This is a policy show.
Yep.
So Brother Charles X, we're talking about woke. What is woke, brother? At least what?
Yes, sir. So now, so if we go into the actual definition, if you will, in terms of the slang, if you will, among our community, and it always meant, for the most part, to aware of the injustice of the social system in which one lives. The phenomenon being woke is they say is a cultural push to challenge problematic norms, systematic injustices, and the overall status quo through complete awareness. Right. But for us, if we can even simplify it more, my understanding, I'm gonna throw it back to you all. My understanding was, just us having an understanding of the impacts of, white supremacy, in particular, on ourselves, and seeing, how the society was being shaped, by just a group of individuals that was ill impacting, us at the end of the day, and so that's for the most part, what it had always meant, so if you were woke, then now, you understand that, okay, there is a reality that exists out there, that is definitely impacting our lives, and now we're conscious of it, we can see it. So now we could go ahead and form strategies, along the way to combat it. Is there something you guys want to add to that?
I don't need to explain anything else. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. My interpretation, very similarly, I would say I probably started hearing the term back in the 90s, as a college student. And it was, again, just the consciousness of don't be asleep, brother. Make sure that you're aware of what's going on around you, and, open your eyes to things, whether it's politically, whether it's, socially. You don't want to find yourself sleeping when there's things like right in front of your face that are impacting you, and if it's impacting you, you should be awakened to it. and that was always like my understanding of it, at least from a cultural standpoint.
Yes, sir. Brother Knight, you going to add to that?
I think that that's pretty much you pretty much phrased it how I would think of it, and he basically summed it up. I mean, it's really the alternative of being asleep or being awoke. It's real simple. So it was always a very positive thing for me. So the fact that it evolved into being something else was always a disrespectful to me. I mean, I was never a fan of that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So let me give just a Vic kind of like a background, because he was on a show that day where we originally had this as a topic of the show. If you can't tell, Vic, sometimes we'll get caught on a subject, and I used to be, look, guilty as charged. I used to get us caught up in the topic. We have a topic that was always meant to just for a brief, a commentary, and then it'll get turned into a topic, at the end of the day. So we would lose track and not get on, with the show as planned or whatnot. So on this particular day, this topic, the war on woke, was on the show, and then we never got to it. But the irony of the situation was that, just literally that same week, earlier in that week, I had gotten into a huge discussion, with a brother that, I always get into various discussions and debate with, a brother from the nation, where we had, 30 plus exchanges, on this subject before the brother bailed out on me, but we were talking about this war on woke, and then he had, he had his post basically had he did a post that's from a sister, and I believe I'm trying to think of what the sister goes by, but I think her name is Maya Mana Yusuf. Maybe you guys could help me with the pronunciation. But she's an American Grammy-nominated singer. I think she goes by stage name of Moo Fresh. Am I saying that right?
I'm not familiar with her.
You haven't heard? Okay, well, apparently she's a Grammy-nominated singer, songwriter, rapper. Okay. Performs underneath this name, Moo Fresh. She identifies as Choctaw, Creek, Cherokee, and African American. And she had her post that said, "I wish the word woke never left the Black community. It ain't been used right ever since." Right? And that's like, for the most part, sentiments of, a lot of people, you know what I mean? But, I took the opportunity to make a comment, in regards to what that post was saying. And then that's what sparked a string of exchanges, from the brother, and I said, the term was hijacked, bro, not our fault. Kind of reminds me of the N-word. I used to fight or escalate a situation when I heard the term used around me by those not Black. I hated that we said it too, but because the word was proliferated by rap music and many others among us tolerated it, it became a losing cause, and I just simply threw my hands up and acquiesced. I still cringe, but the battle was lost. The meaning had changed, right? And so then the brother responded and said, I actually believe the term is used incorrectly by white conservatives intentionally. They know that woke isn't what they imply it is. But if they can make being woke a bad thing, then they keep our people from waking up and being wide awake. That's why they and silly Negro imps push the go woke, go broke narrative, something that I'm notorious, for quoting as well. Based on a lot of situations that I've seen, from companies taking this position and then losing a lot of money. And so then my response to it was, I'm not going to get to the whole 30+ exchange, but these are the key elements, that we can center our discussion around. If you all don't mind.
Okay.
Then I said, well, white conservatives did not take the term from conscious Black people. They took it from the new gen of LBTGQ plus and their allies who hijacked the term, like the rainbow, and intermingled homosexual and liberal ideological positions with awareness of white supremacy. My analogy may not be identical, but it's close enough. Woke does not mean the same today as it did yesterday. If you identify as woke, you and others are taking on baggage you may not desire. Wide awake heterosexual men today do not use the term woke at all and has nothing to do with white conservatives. No imps this way, brother. You know what I mean? And so we can start right there before we get into another little section of the discussion that is relative. But so that's how. So like I said, when I saw this topic, then this conversation was fresh in my mind and whatnot. And it's definitely something I had wanted to visit. So I love to hear just feedback from you all, to the brothers' comments, my comments, and and what you all see in this particular dialogue.
Yeah, I could definitely say that. You could definitely see that it's the definition for me and what I initially felt it was compared to what I see it being portrayed conservatively is definitely different. If you're familiar with the New York Post, it's a publication that is a right-leaning newspaper. Whenever they post anything in regards to, say, for instance, I'll bring up something very simple. This last Little Mermaid situation where they casted Halle Berry, the young Black woman who had the character. Up and down the comment section is like, oh, this is woke, and you could go into the whole thing with Disney and saying, it's a woke generated machine, but the usage of it, and if you ever jump on the site, anytime that they have anything that's race related, you can count on the fact that the word woke is going to be used, and it's going to be used in a fashion very derogatory, and this had nothing to do with the woman who was gay, and or part of the gay community. I do agree that that term has kind of been loosely used, or at least hijacked to a certain degree for a variety of different reasons. But I know conservatively, I've seen it, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, where it's a term that's used negatively in regards to anytime there's a Black movement, anytime equality is being addressed, anytime to kind of frown upon the fact that somebody is bringing up an issue that brings up blackness in the subject, and saying, well, that lawyer is that attorney is woke, that judge is woke, and you can see on various sites, not just the New York Post, I've seen people be challenged, and not be able to break it down as eloquently as you, Brother Charles, especially amongst white conservatives. And you ask them, like, what is your definition of woke? And a lot of them don't even understand what the term woke is, other than the fact that they know that it's a cool thing to say in regards to like something that they can apply to when it's something that they don't like. So that's my problem with it, and because it's been generalized and used out of, in my opinion, its context, and it's become like something that they weaponized amongst the Black community, and it shouldn't be weaponized in this sense, because if there is inequality, if there is racism taking place, then that should definitely be addressed and brought forward.
Well, it's funny when we talk about I hate to use the term the boogeyman, because I know the history of the boogeyman, but it's a metaphor, and it's sort of like what woke has become. But it was Antifa before, so now it's woke now.
Oh,
and so it's the situation where when he's right when you talk. I think that was a great point that person made about the whole the alphabet. I'm sorry, the LGBT. Because again, woke does take on a different meaning as used by different people, and I'm not gonna necessarily speak bad on them for using it, because it, one thing about that community is, to me, they're people. We're people. We're all people. I think we all need to figure out some way to interact with each other, to be respectful, to be peaceful, to be loving. But we don't have to embrace the concepts that each and other person has. If someone is of a religion that is in conflict with my religious position, I don't need them to adapt to my religion, and I don't need to adapt to their religion. What I need to do is show them the respect, and we have some fundamental human interaction. And that's what I feel that's very important with that community. But I feel that a community that has been marginalized and oppressed as they have somehow feels like it's okay. So now they're the voice to dictate right and wrong. And to me, this shouldn't be about right and wrong. This should be about respect. So I should respect the way that you feel, but on the flip side, you need to respect the way that I feel. And I think that a lot of those people, a lot of the conservatives that kind of take a lot of animosity to I hate to say the Rainbow Coalition, because I'm not talking down on them. I'm just saying that I'm going to mess up the letters, so I'm trying not to avoid that. But the bottom line is, this movement of human beings that have an absolute right to their way of thinking is very uncomfortable for a lot of conservatives. And some things they absolutely don't agree with, that they probably shouldn't agree with. Things that I don't agree with. For example, I don't believe that trans people should be a boy that was biologically born a male that is identifying as a woman should be competing in women's sports. I'm just saying that that's a line that I'm going to draw. But what I do think is that, the trans, whatever, you should have every right to go to every movie theater, to rent any apartment, to live in any community, to have respect for the police to protect you. All the rights that are of significance and matter. You absolutely should have those things. But what you shouldn't dictate as far as what I would say that is fundamentally a problem. If I'm not okay having a relationship with somebody because they're not of a gender that I identify with, you don't get to dictate my concept of gender. You get to dictate your concept of gender. And I'm going to use the pronouns that you want me to use because it's respect. But just because I use those pronouns don't mean that I identify with those concepts in my head. So we got to understand that we got to do respect. We don't have to convert to other ways persons are thinking. So that's kind of my issue with, with the sort of like the woke friction, that I think they'd have legitimate grounds to. It's illegitimate when they're basically saying that we don't want to make any accommodation for anything. We don't want to teach you things about Black people history that makes us look bad, that is bad, because we don't want to feel bad. That's when I'm like, okay, clearly now you're just protecting yourself and you're running from the truth. So when you say that they hijacked woke, I suppose they did after a fashion. But when you're talking about DeSantis fighting wokeness, nah, he's fighting our wokeness. He's fighting our history. He's fighting our ability to teach our information in our schools. It ain't got nothing to do with LGBTQ or whatever, anything.
Yes.
So that's where I'm coming from. Brother Charles X, I see you writing. Looks like you probably got a whole bunch of stuff to say.
Oh yeah, yes sir. I mean, I like to make make little notes and whatnot as we're having a discussion. But yes, I mean, just on your last point, regarding DeSantis, that's definitely a part of it. Your point being that, when it comes to white people, in particular the adults, not wanting their children to know about the history of injustice, that was visited upon us and others, because, they had injustice against themselves as well, but particularly they don't want to know about the injustices that was visited upon us, and it's, for good reason. I get why they had that idea, but in addition to that, there are other issues that, white people are definitely feeling threatened by, which is what Brother Vic was dealing with, or addressing when he was, basically the term they use, and then I guess we use it too, is called DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so for me, that's like, I have a mixed opinion on the subject, because I think it's very good for companies obviously to be diversified, but I think it's also very bad from our standpoint, especially being me, who's a man of excellence and believes that, I don't want a favor or a handout. I want to earn my position. You know what I mean? So, if I'm going to get selected, don't let it be because, I have a darker hue, than what the next person might have. Let it be because I'm more knowledgeable and I have more of the characteristics that's going to make me a better fit for this company, versus, again, just, simply my skin tone. And so a lot of white individuals, obviously feel that way too, because, they're thinking that, like in my day, we had, when we would go to college, we had various, preparation in terms of, we were able to get in just based on the fact that, that we were, again, of a darker complexion.
Affirmative action.
You know what I mean? Because historically, say again?
Like affirmative action.
Affirmative action, is what it was called. Exactly. You know what I mean? So, and I believe at that time it was very necessary because, it wasn't, just because, others were had higher competency, and they were being excluded. It was a lot of times that we would have just as high, of credentials, and accomplishments as another person. And then, the person who was lighter, AKA whiter, they would get selected over us, So then, I think there was a good, step towards helping to level in the playing field. Today, unfortunately, that's not the case. A lot of times, people who are doing better, and have more accomplishments are being excluded just simply because of their race. It's like, the opposite, the opposite of racism, if you will. That we experience. Also the thing that I would bring up too is that this, in terms of when conservatives use the word woke, they're also talking about how there's an anti-male agenda that leans more towards feminism and some of these other, situations in terms of, sexual preference, so when it comes to certain movies, changing, the race and or sex of a character, in favor, of another one, then sometimes, they definitely have absolutely been mad at that fact. We saw that with The Little Mermaid, right? Brother Vic brought that up. You know what I mean? The fact that sister, was put in that role, all hell done broke loose. You know what I mean? From that conservative crowd. You know what I mean? And something that something I don't identify with, and I didn't have a problem with at all. Especially because I grew up doing a lot of surfing, and The Little Mermaid was. I had The Little Mermaid on my surfboard. You know what I mean? That was one of my favorite movies back in the day. You know what I mean? So I had no problem with it. In fact, I welcome it. And so with me being right at center is very I don't want to say rare, but there's definitely a lot of positions that I agree with conservatives on. But then I can also have positions that swing all the way to the left. As well, for example, one of them would be my stance on Israel and the genocide that they're committing, against the Palestinians. And that's something that from the right and conservatives, man, outside of Candace Owens, there's no one else really, speaking on that, from that community, But then if you look at the people who are the most passionate on the subject, and causing, the most attention, be garnered that way have been, primarily the LBG2 ultra left-wing Democrats, at the end of the day, they're the ones who are most associated with that. So again, so it goes both ways on this woke. Just the last thing I would bring up is that even before I came into the nation, I had gotten into community organizing and helping to change, some of the challenges I saw in our community. And so a group that I had worked with, who later on, were that they were eliminated, if you will. It was a group called Acorn, and so of course we used to organize in these communities. And when I was working there, this is when I first, started seeing that, that my peers, if you will, in that organization, a lot of them, definitely were from the LGBTQ before they even called themselves that. They were there inside of these organizations. And I remember when a flip of the script had changed. And that was when it came to the social activist, community. It was particular our sisters that were leading the charge. They were approached by the LGBT, gay rights activists to say, hey, why don't we do a merger, and then we'll support your issues, and in return you all help us support our issues. Now, as a man, I was just like, man, look, what, I don't discriminate for you doing what you want to do. This is America, but I'm not comfortable, being an advocate, to talk about, hey, go be gay. That's not what I'm looking to do. But in terms of supporting, people not gay bashing and harming your community just because you want to go a different way, count me in. I don't mind that. Right. But our sisters in particular, especially because I went to college as well. So in college, they were already starting to really organize around that movement and closing ranks. You know what I'm saying? And so it's in that origin story, if you will. When this started to happen, this is when the word woke started to have an evolution, and then now start taking on the fact of it's not about just race anymore. It's about sexual orientation and preferences. If you're not, with, this, being gay and trans and these other alternative lifestyles, then, you're not, you can only be woke if you and are inclusive with that as an element as well. You know what I mean? And so that was way back. I'm talking about like this was in the late 90s, early 2000s. When this happened, and there's a different activist situations that happened in North Carolina where you saw, that the new unity came about, and ultimately it turned into Black Lives Matter, where hell, you can't even be in a leadership position if you're a heterosexual male. You know what I'm saying? You had to be from the LGBTQ plus community in order to even be a part of that movement. You know what I mean? So that's where it kind of it started taking this origin. You know what I mean? So enough for me. Let me throw it back to you all, Ball Court.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of different things. One that a little ways back that really just kind of played into something that I see like from corporate America. You talked in regards to just how maybe straight white males may feel victimized, and then we talked a little bit about the affirmative action piece of it, and the diversity component, why people, I shouldn't get a job just because of the fact that I'm black. I should get the job, because I'm the most qualified. I do believe that, but I'll give you an example of why there is a need for diversity. And this is actually relatively new, even though it's like a decade ago. If you look this up, Seagram's Gin and Rum actually had a campaign, and I'm telling you, you can look this up. And they had, and what they had was, you can get some rum with a do-rag on it. All right. Where do you think that they were marketing these, this at? In New York, it was all they had in Harlem. It was always in the Polo Grounds. If you were in Queens, it was like Jamaica, Queens, Bronx, of course. If one of us was in that boardroom when the decision was being made, where somebody was pitching this idea, a marketing idea, where, it would be a good idea to really up our sales. Let's add do-rags. Let's add do-rags to this marketing campaign. That becomes like, what do you guys want to do? Are you for real about this? Like, what is this? The 60s?
And that's why you have to have a voice in ththose type of decision-making situations.
This is why
You're absolutely correct.
It's not like you're just going to bring some idiot out off the street. Obviously, you want to make sure the person is qualified, the person is capable, but there's a need to diversify these rooms because our voices are very important. And that's like one of the things that I feel like where straight white males feel like they're being attacked because this feels uncomfortable for them by somebody like myself, who's a mid-level exec, in the pharmaceutical arena. And I had college, but I went to a state university, Immediately I know when I walk in the room, they're thinking like this guy was a diversity hire. I got to make sure I work twice as hard, be twice as productive, to eliminate that stereotype and that perception.
Yeah.
And without any doubt. So on one hand, where there's the thought of like, oh, this person got the job, but then it gets to a point where I'm at now, it's like, oh yeah, that's Vic. You know how long it took it's Vic in the job doing this for over 20 years? So we can't have one without the other, the understanding of just like what that takes, to be in the spot, to embrace it and make sure that you're paying it forward for the person before you. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Hey, didn't Palpatine have that? Senator Palpatine have that quote to something affect those in power, have a basically don't want to let go. So
okay. Because
the thing of the situation is if the pie is distributed a certain way and these people have the biggest piece of the pie and you're trying to sort of like divvy it up more equity wise, you by definition must be taking away pie from them. Yeah. So it's going to create a natural resistance and disdain. I mean, that's just how it is. Now, I would say that you just work on creating a bigger pie. It's not an issue about taking what their thing is. When you talk about affirmative action, my stance has always been, look, I don't want you to just give people, jobs just to get people representation. But I say, look, we need to take our people. If we're not passing or getting these scores and stuff like that, we need our own after school programs and academic and tutoring and stuff like that. These are what that are reparations to build our people up to go then compete on a proper level, as opposed to just because of the way that you look, but just now you're getting that opportunity. So there was a tactic for it. There was a lane for it to work. But to me, the greatest tactic was to deal with the actual inequality. And that's just the fact that their households had resources and things that a lot of our households didn't. So really give those households those resources, and then we can deal on a sort of like a more level situation. So that's always been my take about that affirmative action and all that type of stuff. Because again, I don't want people to look down on people or to presume or to say like, oh, here goes inclusion Vic, or here goes whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's just the bottom line is you know the darn well that once you get in situations where people like you ain't been there before, by definition, you're gonna have to do more work. In order for it to work, you're going to have to work harder. You're going to have to do this, that, and that. And the only way that you can accomplish it by just putting in the work and just doing it. So it's going to be what it's going to be. But again, to me, I'd rather us work on building ourselves up and then, dealing with them on that level like that.
Bro, I feel the same way. And what you're speaking on, I mean, go get back to some points that Vic had made is, see, I believe in fact, I know the way that we defeat so-called white supremacy is through Black excellence, if you will. And I hate using the term because we're going to get into that term later on too, but, by us, showing excellence and showing the ability to do for self, right, as a nation term, to do for self, then we murder all the other ridiculousness, in terms of us being inferior, and then being so needy, if you will, from others. I mean, we could go ahead and start providing, for ourselves. But right now in America, since we're allowing ourselves to be in a dependent mode, right? In fact, we even call ourselves, and allow ourselves to be called minorities. The root word being minor, and a minor being an infant, someone underneath the age of 18, that, cannot and does not have the ability to care for oneself. You see what I'm saying? So there, when we get into etymology, which is what we're touching bases on with the woke, this comes into play, not to psychoanalyze, our conditioning, but there's definitely a psychology behind it. The other point I want to mention is that right here inside of America right now, we're at this juncture, to where it reminds me of, I don't know if y'all ever been inside a household where someone has a cat and a dog, and if they have a cat and a dog, if it's a household that is abundant of resources, it has plenty of food, and play, a nice surroundings, a nice habitat, oftentimes you'll see the cat and the dog, get along with one another. Now, the two by nature, opposite energies, that are enemies by nature, getting along, living together. You see the cat curled up with the dog, sleeping together and whatnot, but let it be a household to where, the resources are not abundant, and there's a lack of, and there's a need, you still have these two animals living in that environment. They're naturally going to be going against one another and fighting for one another against one another. There's going to be conflict that exists. And so we're starting to see that more and more, as it be the reality here inside of America. We talked about situations earlier where we're discussing automation, AI, industries consolidating, for various reasons and whatnot, less jobs, less money to go around on the table. These are situations that is going to, exaggerate, and really, create that same environment that I spoke of on the dog and cat being at one another. There's a movie coming out here real soon to let you know. We talked about on the show earlier about the Nickelodeon and whatnot on the Focus Up show, how these people, are doing a lot of things subliminally, to impact the audience and entertain the audience. Well, there's a movie coming out called Civil War, and there's been plenty of articles being written that shows that the majority of Americans feel like the Civil War is not only near, but imminent. You see what I'm saying? And look at our community, the division that exists, the violence that exists, inside our community. That's not what we need at all. And then earlier, Brother Vic was talking about the do-rags, and I do remember that, with the liquor and whatnot that was being promoted. You remember that time, and I bet you guys remember this too. Remember on Sports Illustrated where Charles Barkley was on the cover with some chains around his neck and around his feet, looking like a slave, and some ragged up, clothes and whatnot. Yeah. So the thinking was that I remember Kenny Smith had spoke on it. He's like, man, I'm not even mad at Charles. For taking that money and going on that cover. I'm mad at the executives who thought that was a good idea, and there was no one there to tell them, that this is not going to be received very well at all. So there's a time that absolutely diversity, becomes fundamental and will help save you. But then let me get the flip side. The flip side is in a case like Bud Light, where they had some diversity. In fact, it may have been a little too diverse because this individual came in and said, hey, look, let's just go ahead and throw a transgender in the mix on the commercial, whatnot, alienate our whole core base, supporters that's buying our product, and let's just see how this goes. And it end up costing them billions, and no longer even being the number one sold beverage in terms of alcohol here inside the United States. Cost them dearly, for that sort of decision. So I believe there's definitely a balance, depending on culture, product, that has to be considered. But that is definitely a case of go woke, go broke, without doubt. There's other ones, as well too. Target, comes to mind. There's some things that were going on there. But then, the last point I would make is that, coming back to the vote, that we have coming up here, soon, in the election. It's funny that Brother Vic, he said that he's voted on both sides of the aisle. And then, when he said it, I started thinking like, well, damn, what about me? And I'll have you know that I've never voted for a Republican, believe it or not. You know what I'm saying? I voted for Barack that first go round because I was like, man, we're going to give the brother a chance. We're going to give the brother a chance. I was so disappointed, on his first stint, those first 4 years, that the next time it came around and it came to be, I forgot the gentleman's name. I think the McCain, I think it was, but, I didn't like none of them, so I didn't support none of them, and so then the next vote came around. Now we're looking at, Trump being introduced into the mix, and then I don't even remember, who
Hillary
was going.
Clinton.
That's right, Hillary Clinton. There was no way in hell I was voting for Hillary Clinton, and it wasn't because I was sexist. It's because I knew too much about the Clinton. I should say, what's the word that they like us to say? When we're talking about crimes and criminals, alleged crimes of the crime family, foundation and whatnot. I knew what they did inside of Haiti. I knew that there was this, these questions being asked in terms of human trafficking and drugs and whatnot. So, and I knew how her foreign policy, what it was and how she carried it out. So I was like, man, I'm not voting for her, and Trump ain't no way in hell I'm voting for him either. So again, I abstain. I voted for other situations, but I didn't vote either one for either one of those. And then now we come to a second term of Trump, and now I felt better about Trump, but still it wasn't enough for me to support him then. And now we're coming into this election now, and as much as I have a lot of positive things to say for what Trump would do for America versus what Biden has done for America and what Trump did do for America in the first round, even has said that, it's this dynamic that exists to where, both Democrats and conservatives, they have these elements there, among them that I cannot identify, and it doesn't motivate me to want really either one of them. Now, granted, if I had to pick, gun to my head, one or the other, Trump all day. And the only reason why I would say that so, convincingly is the fact that when I look at the Democrat agenda and know what it is and know its various stances, both policy-wise and on very social issues, I cannot support it because I know it's not in the best interest of, not only our people, but the people. As a whole, this nation, I don't believe is in the best interest. So, that's why I can say now, albeit with Trump, there's definitely policies I don't like, because when it comes to Israel, unfortunately, I think it'll be very similar, to where Trump being in power, as well as Biden, they will support Israel, and allow these atrocities to take place. And so I can't help but look at the atrocities being committed in Palestine, as being similar to what we've experienced at the same hands and the same mindset of the individuals that are to the tune of billions, raping America's economy and supporting, this regime that exists there. You know what I mean? So again, I'm still at this crossroads where, I'm not really motivated to vote for any one of them, you know what I mean? But I want to tie that all the way back in and take it back, to this, the term woke, you know what I mean? Does this mean I'm woke? You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, you know what I mean? Is that what it means? And I agree with the sister that did the post. I hate that the definition has changed, you know what I mean? But to a certain degree, it still is very similar outside of, again, and the LGBTQ component, to it. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, people who are alert, and aware of things racially and socially and the discrimination and injustice that's taking place, you know what I mean? Then, if you understand that to be a problem and a challenge, then I have to say you absolutely are woke.
When you talk about, I like to think of woke angst. When they have such an issue, they're mad at something because they're like, oh, they're woke, so I'm not going to support that. And to me, that's hypocritical because you're basically doing the opposite. You're basically picking a side just because of the politics don't align with you're taking a political position. So you know what I'm saying? You can't be mad about inclusion and then they do it and go, well, I'm not going to do that, because you're basically saying, well, they're not doing the thing that you like. They're not going into your politics. You're making a big uproar about it, as opposed to just saying that, these people, this is what they're doing. I'm just kind of moving on about my life. I'm not necessarily protesting this or the other. I'm just not getting involved. The fact that Bud Light decided to have some trans dude model, whatever, I'm just like, whatever. I don't buy Bud because of the commercials. I buy Bud because of Buzz. I'm not saying me, I don't drink beer, but my point is that, a lot of them complain about, woke because woke is restrictive, woke is counseling, but they're basically canceling the other way. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm saying that to me, it's a lot of a hypocrisy, and it's a much ado about nothing. I mean, it's okay to dig into your position and to dig into your beliefs, but it's also okay to show the other person respect, even though you don't see eye to eye. So that's kind of my issue.
Yeah, and I love what both of you guys are actually saying. I think just also, let me throw this out in terms of political identities. I think culturally, we as Black people, we just really look at being a conservative or liberal differently than our white counterparts. And I'll say this from this standpoint. I probably voted Republican because when I broke into pharmaceuticals, and it's ironic because now everybody's saying pharmaceuticals is like a part of the liberal machine. I broke into it and I was indoctrinated by conservatives saying like I should be voting conservative for like everything because big business will help support you. It supports our business and it supports your lifestyle, and you become socialized by individuals who will tell you, regardless, Democrat or Republican, me just happen to be on the Republican side, like this is what you should be identifying with, success, the tax bracket now that you're in, the people that represent, progression, people that are successful due to their merit. And, I started looking at the parties differently. This was not something that I had ever even looked at. When I voted for Clinton and I voted for Bush and all this other stuff, it just kind of was like one of those things that I went by a gut feeling. But then I started becoming intentional about it until I wasn't. Like I reverted back to myself in regards to whether I felt a candidate really represents me. All right. I think with the wokeness is the same thing in terms of the cultural differences whites and blacks see it as. blacks see us, in my opinion, the way I came up with, again, just the simplicity of that word. Like, hey, be woke, my brother. Don't be asleep. These are some of the things that are happening in the world today. This is happening in our communities. Are you aware of this? I think amongst our white counterparts, they look at it as like, oh my goodness, I'm being moved out of the workforce, or my job is being taken from me, or these associations are against me, and it's a negative to be a straight Christian white male. My thought on being woke and their thought on being woke are two vastly different things, but it's being looked at underneath the same umbrella. So, and I think it becomes even more eye-opening too when you read statements or you hear statements in regards to like something supposedly being woke, and it's just like, that's not how I interpret that as being a woke situation, at least not for me, at least not how I initially thought about it. So so it's a part of that. I mean, it has been hijacked, and but it's also, it kind of, in my hand, it goes with identity politics as well. That's a big part of it too. If you're a conservative, your idea of a white conservative, your idea of woke is going to be different than a white liberals look at woke. And then I think amongst us as blacks, we just see it as like being woke, and we can look at, maybe in my opinion, just the varying differences, but inherently it was the purity of what that word is, just simply just to be awake. And how can that even ever be looked at negatively?
Exactly. Brother Charles, you look like he's about to jump in.
But I like the format we're doing, where we're getting a chance to exhaust our ideas and our points and moving on in a nice, organized manner. So I'm being very patient. So if you are exhausted your points, and I'll go ahead and jump in.
I will say this. I lost my train of thought. Now go ahead, Brother Charles X.
Yes, sir. I appreciate everything that was being said, and I heard when you were speaking, Brother Nice, is you were talking about what is called cancel culture, and the fact that conservatives and Republicans started to do something that really, if you recall, was a tactic that liberals, especially far left liberals, resurrected. Not boycott, but straight cancel, and they still do it today. So this is something that they embrace, and now the other side say, okay, we're gonna go ahead and weaponize this too. And when they weaponized it, boy, did they, because they for real was hitting people in the pocket. Unlike some of these so-called canceling that was taking place on the left. So right now I saw, even just recently, a new tactic that was being launched from a sister against a brother. Most people know who Angel Reese is, the LSU college basketball player. There's a brother on ESPN that came out, made some comments and whatnot that a lot of those far left individuals, did not appreciate. Let me say it that way, and they did not agree with. And so then they start, launching some tactics, in place to try to get the brother fired or removed from ESPN, which is funny because back in the day, and I'm going to talk about, how things have changed, but back in the day, ESPN was very conservative, And then it started to change, and evolve into what we see now today, where it's controlled by, a left-leaning, politics, no doubt about it, And the same is true with Brother Vic when he was talking about pharma, Pharma, that used to be a thing that absolutely was a more conservative, and that people from the right, man, when it came to different, ballot measures and whatnot that uplifted and promoted, the pharma industry, man, they were all on it. But, that took a change. And now we look at it today, it's a big business, and definitely, something that's associated with the left without a doubt, as is, which is a shock, a shock to most when they really look at it. It used to be the left and Democrats who were all about the working class, people, but now the Democrats are the party of the rich, you know what I mean? And they used to be the Republicans, the party of the rich. Now the Democrats are the party of the rich, and it's actually the right who is fighting the most for the working class people. And there's been plenty of articles out there that will support this, you know what I mean? So, it's an interesting dynamic. And then, we're all right when we're talking about how, but Vic's been really driving this point is that when, many whites are identifying with woke, whether they're considering themselves to be awakened, you know what I mean? Or if they're looking at, woke from the other side, is a very different definition, you know what I mean, than the one that we came up to mean. And so right now, an example is, how we look at things totally different, but it's the same issue would be the current immigration issue. You know what I mean? All of us, to a degree, is we're looking at the immigration that's coming in and people coming in as impacting the labor force, and potentially is not there yet. You know what I mean? But potentially is not hard to believe that many of these immigrants are going to be allowed to work. You know what I mean? And get various unskilled labor positions, which is going to be direct competition for the poor. And unfortunately, many of us make up those ranks, so there's going to be, a fight, if you will, that will exist between, those jobs, and immigrants, and of course, those who foundationally have been here in America. And then we're all also looking at the immigration issue and how it impacts crime. You know what I mean? In general, people some who are being let in, they're not all criminals, but we absolutely know there are criminals among, many of these individuals who are coming into the nation, and then there has been a tick, that we can see, from immigration, that has impacted crime statistics, but then now we look at the differences among us, is for white people, in addition, they're looking at this as being a browning of the nation taking place. Which is going back to Vic's earlier point, various dog whistles that exist, out there amongst conservatives, is that, with all these, so-called, Hispanic and Latinos, and people who are even darker than, myself, who people will identify, as so-called Black, they're coming here, into the country, and then now the numbers are being even out, but then you have the flip side where many of us on this side of the game where we're looking at, okay, yeah, it's true, jobs, low skilled jobs, crime is being impacted and whatnot, but at the same token, if there is going to be a civil war, there is going to be a race war, and we are looking at justice when the fact that once this nation was nothing but brown people before we were invaded by colonizers, that this is leveling the playing field, without doubt, that's taking place right now with this immigration. So very similar situations, a similar situation, but how from a woke standpoint in our own various definitions, we're looking at it completely different than others, yet there are some similarities that exist.
Okay.
I just remember the train of thought that I was thinking about. I remember when Star Wars first came up with this last trilogy that they dropped, and they centered it around the female, Rey.
Hated it.
And I remember when I first, before it dropped, I'm not giving an opinion of what they did with it, but when it first came out, I thought like, wow, I think that's a good idea, because guys are already all into this stuff, you know what I'm saying? And guys are going to be into it no matter what. That's what I was thinking at the time. And I think now this is going to draw in those females that really kind of just, that's some guy type stuff or whatever. So in my mind, I was originally thinking like, okay, this is clever, just not trying to be woke, but just trying to reach a bigger audience and try to bring them into this audience. And, at some point, it did become a bit of an attempt to sort of like go out of your way, tokenism. You know what I'm saying? It's not so much that you're just getting natural representation, but you're going out of the way to change genders of characters and things like that, or change orientations of characters. Me and you, Vic, we talked about how I was talking about, one character that we always loved was Mr. what was the DC character?
Terrific.
Mr. Terrific.
Mr. Terrific.
And I was like, they're bringing Mr. Terrific on the Flash TV show, and then they made him gay, and I was thinking, look,
oh my gosh, that's a
and I was like,
example. Yeah,
and I was like, look, our struggle is not their struggle. Don't always try to amalgamate our struggles and stuff like that. This was an actual character that had, a big part of him being who he was is because what happened to his wife. There are characters, gay characters, that are easy to use, whatever, but don't just make the black character the gay character. So, that's why when some of their arguments that they have about their woke angst, is grounded in some type of reason and logic, because it's forced tokenism, and it's manipulating story that doesn't need to be told. One thing that pisses off a lot of the diehard comic book people and stuff like that is, like, in the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they make Captain Marvel so super powerful, but I mean, she is on no level Thor's power scale. But in the MCU, they flirt with the notion that she might be beyond it, and it's kind of an insult to the people that are following this stuff. Because I mean, for a big, for people that don't know the comic books, for a big period of time, Captain Marvel, she wasn't Captain Marvel. The black sister was Captain Marvel. She was Miss Marvel. But Miss Marvel was basically in a coma for a big part of the comics series. So when you're looking at X-Men 97, when you see Rogue flying around, the reason why Rogue has the ability to fly is because she took Miss Marvel's abilities because she touched her too long. So, she just wasn't that power scale type person. Now, in her binary form, she's very powerful, but still, I'm just saying that, those that understand that some of these machinations of these characters take away from their story. One of my favorite characters in the comics was Taskmaster. He's technically a villain, but he's kind of like walks the fine line, but he's a guy. You know what I'm saying? He's a guy that trains a lot of the villains. He has an incredible story, and then they just decided to flip into some female that can't even really talk in Black Widow. And it's just, these are machinations that really don't help the narrative.
Yeah, we could get an entire conversation on it.
We should. That should be tough.
The last Black Panther movie, I was not a fan of. It wasn't just the fact that they made Chadwick Boseman character a woman, but they had her pitted against Namor. And if you're familiar with both of the characters' mythology, this is literally like having Batman get into a fight with I won't say Superman, but like Shazam or something like that, and he's holding his own. Even Chadwick as a male character wouldn't have been able to sustain a fight with Namor, whether weakened out of water or not. Namor is a very powerful, almost godlike
Class 100. Class 100, if you know the terminology.
And we have a woman that just took on the mantle, who technically is a very powerful, enhanced person, having a straight fist
minor level
versus a character like that. I couldn't deal with that because even the male character had been able to do with that. But so some of that I do agree. It's
Brother Charles X,
it's so forceful,
Brother Charles X. Wait a second, Vic, I'm sorry. I'm going to apologize to both of you people because now a rant is going to have to play out. Okay.
Okay.
I took big issue with what they did. First of all, I wasn't necessarily a big fan of the first Black Panther because I feel like he's a nerfed version of the Black Panther. First of all, the Black Panther in the comic books is extremely intelligent. When you talk about Batman, he's Batman times whatever. He's more than Batman. He's got way more resources than Batman. So he doesn't have to run to his sister for technology and stuff like that. And you're talking about a person who draws a hard line. He's usually worked out a problem 3 steps before everybody's even got to it. So, it's one of those type of situations where in the comic box, they're always saying how can you do this? And they go, oh yeah, because you're the Black Panther. You know what I'm saying? So that was who that character was in the comic books.
I had a problem with the casting, honestly. I like Chadwick, but you know who I wanted to be the character? Adewale Aguilar. I thought that
that name. I don't know who that actor is, but
he's
just that
dude
name.
From Oz. He looks like Black Panther. The one who played Adebisi.
But my thing is this is the dude that had the most highest tech on the planet,
Yeah.
who was bros with the Sorcerer Supreme and all of these resources, and somehow this dude just decides to die off camera to COVID. You know what I'm saying? And then he's the king of the dead. So it's like that's not even an excuse to get away from him, because you have to deal with him in a Panther realm. Everything that they did about it was absolutely nonsensical and ridiculous. You should have recasted it. They would not kill Spider-Man because the actor died. They wouldn't kill Superman because the actor died, but they killed Black Panther, and Black people were so stupid to support this decision that it was just absolutely ridiculous. So
because they're not comic readers. They're not comic readers like us.
Hey, check this out. Go on Disney Plus. Go look at something called Marvel's the Earth's Mightiest Heroes. I'm not talking about Avengers Assemble. My Earth's Mightiest Heroes Avengers. The animation ain't DC animation. They run that. You know what I'm saying? But I'm talking about the story. Once the Black Panther gets onto that roster, that's the Black Panther. Go see that and you'll see exactly what the Black Panther should have been, and you'll understand it. He just was another level type of person. So I'm sorry to hijack the show, but when you talk about a misportrayal of one of our greatest Black superheroes, but that's what I'm saying. It's inclusion, making Captain Marvel, the Captain Marvel that gave Captain Marvel the ability, the fact that they turned her to a woman, that was like that was one of my homeboys' favorite characters. And then they just flipped it and turned her into I forgot Michael Douglas's wife. Not Michael Douglas's wife.
His daughter.
I'm talking about Dustin. It's Warren Beatty's wife. Warren Beatty's wife.
Warren Beatty's wife.
That was the one that they made because the actual original Captain Marvel. This is the one character, the comic book character, they actually killed and they never brought him back. He died like a cancer. They had like a big episode with all the heroes around him and stuff like that. It was like a big to do, but that was a special character, and they just kind of nerfed him. And it's like, oh, here you go, Ann Beatty. Just play this out and run with it. So again, sometimes inclusion is kind of a problem. Go ahead.
You may want to explain what nerf means to our non. Comic. Educated viewers.
Because maybe they don't have Nerf toys anymore, so I suppose this is how old we are. You have a real football, and then this company Nerf made a Nerf football, which was a whole lot softer, so it wasn't as durable or as tough as an actual football, but it was something that you could probably throw around the house and not break stuff. So a Nerf is a softened, weakened version of a thing. So when I talk about a Nerf, hey, you want to see a tough version of the Black Panther, go see that one that the Hughes brothers did for BET. That was a blackity black Panther. You know what I'm saying? Me and my daughter were watching that like, oh my goodness, So yeah, that's the Black Panther, not the Nerf one. That again, I'm sorry that brother died. God bless him, his family, and all.
Absolutely.
He should have never took the role if he was sick, and if he was, he should have let everybody know, hey, this character needs to go on. Which I think he did say that, but he obviously didn't stamp his feet hard enough because they disobeyed it.
No, I was going to Victor go ahead and finish his point, that he was going to make, but that was a great a segue how you tune in, and gave us that history, because literally a lot of those points was what I wanted to address too. But let Vic go ahead and finish what he was about to say.
No. I think Thomas absolutely carried it. I mean, we can we could probably, Thomas and I, because we're comic heads, we could definitely talk forever. I'm just was really sad, and even with the first movie as well, like that should be, this should be like a classic movie, comic movie amongst Blacks. And I wanted it to be the way the world was introduced to Blade with Wesley Snipes, because he really captured Blade. 1, 2, 3 went off the rails. I don't know what.
I was about to say 3.
3 went off the rails, bro. But I was really, especially for those of us who are like really comic, graphic novel readers. He really captured the character. They found the right person. They casted him. Good storyline. And 2 was good as well. And then 3, they just was like, all right, we're gonna make this crazy. But that's all I wanted to say. I just representation is good, but it shouldn't be forceful.
Should be
If
forced. Exactly.
there's
Should be forced.
if there's one point that I would make, I do like representation. I do think we should make efforts in terms of making sure that everyone has a seat at the table, so to say, but it shouldn't be forced. And I'll bring it even to my own experience. I was brought in, and because somebody felt like I was capable of doing the job. Not because let me just give this dude a bone. And I proved this person right. Exceedingly. And if I didn't, that would have been egg on his face, but more importantly, it would have been egg on my face. Had he made the wrong decision, that would have been looked really bad on both people. So let me just throw that out.
Brother
Yes,
Charles.
sir. Yes, sir. It's I love how the conversation, where it went. Because mainly because, is now we're some brothers here. We're talking about a situation. Now imagine that others from other communities, in particular the LGBT plus and the feminists, and even our own sisters. What they hear is these guys are sexist. They're homophobic. Just simply for our views and whatnot. Whereas that sci-fi industry, in general, has always been definitely male dominated. Star Wars has like a 75% male audience. The original Star Wars and whatnot and everything. And then they bring in this new director who makes some off the wall comments about how she's going to make men feel uncomfortable and whatnot. That is not what we would call organic, to Vic's point. We don't want to force a situation, allow things to be organic, but I didn't, these things that were changed, I didn't dislike them because I'm a sexist or I'm homophobic. It just changed the reality of the whole, universe, and what we once knew, as being the original that we were okay with, that we were fans of, it changed. So that's why, we are against, these changes, So the flip side is also true where you're seeing some of these white individuals, that's why I'm slow to label things, a racist, I'm very slow because I had to really look at the situation and be like, okay, is this truly racism or is this just something that is a concern, to white people at the end of the day? I know me, I would, and I'm not racist, but I would rather my children, marry, and produce children with similar people with similar complexion than I would another, mainly because I want the baby to look like me. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, And so imagine how it's even more exaggerated for a white man. A white man, if his daughter gets with a brother, my God, there's no resemblance. You carry the baby, there's no resemblance. So I get it. So I'm not going to call him racist if he prefer his daughter, marry a white man. That's just, hey, I get it. Your genetic pool, you want to survive, you want to live. You see what I'm saying? But again, some of these changes that we were talking about, there's times where I do support the so-called inclusion. Like I remember when Justice League was recreated and they made the Green Lantern black, man, that was hard. Green Lantern, I like that version.
And the beautiful thing about that is they didn't just make Hal Jordan black. They used the black Green Lantern. That character was always black. They used John, whatever his name is. So yeah, to me, that's a good way to do inclusion by using those characters. That's why there's gay characters. Go grab North Star. Go grab whatever. You know what I'm saying? That perfectly fits the bill. So yeah, so
is gay.
They made now they made Iceman gay. And to me, I don't know if that was very logical considering his history. I mean, put it this way, in theory, you could say that he just ultimately came out and he was whatever, you know what I'm saying? But I'm just saying that those are the type of things that I would say are kind of forced as opposed to characters. There's like a whole different world of comics. You have Marvel, you have DC. I forget where this other one is, but there's this one where they have the Authority, where this guy's like Superman, and they got this other guy, I forgot what his name, but he's like Batman. Now, they're gay. They actually have a relationship. I mean, but that's their story. Those characters were always that. as opposed to making these characters that. And you know,
Right.
to me, I was never really cared much about this sexuality story. I always felt like, look, that's just getting in the way. Let's get to the get. You know what I'm saying? I want
Right.
to see them fight. I want to see the work. I don't want to see him complain. I don't want to see Hawkeye you know, tripping because him and Mockingbird are having, you know, marital problems or something like that. That to me,
Right.
that never really contributed to my story. So
Right,
I'm just
right.
saying that there were just certain things that I just didn't need to take that had to be a part of. So I mean, I always feel like sexuality is overplayed anyways. You know, I just there's so much more story to tell than that. If you want to tell that story, that's fine. But you know, again, that's not the story that I'm looking for.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I don't know how you all feel, but I feel like, you know, we for the most part exhausted the dialogue. I mean, there's some other areas I was going to go into in terms of, woke is not the only term that we've made up or augmented or changed the terms. I mean, we really want to get down to it. Unfortunately, a lot of us don't read, and so we don't pick up things like the Black's Law Dictionary, fourth edition in particular. We don't pick up the American Heritage Dictionary and really truly study etymology and words in general. So I think that's part of our challenge, because there's terms that we have, gravitated towards or held on for endearment purposes that has really, not had a positive effect on our community. And one of those words to me is nigga. Is used as a term of endearment, oftentimes, but when we really dig into the etymology of the word and the understanding of the word, is not something that's positive. When we start digging into the word colored, it's when you look up the word in the Black's Law Dictionary, it has been held that there is no legal technical signification, to the phrase colored person, which the courts are bound judicially to know. So then when we start identifying ourselves with these terms, like legally, we have weakened our position here in America, and our status is really even being a human being, when we understand things. So, when we go into court and we're arguing for civil rights, there's a term called, civilitiae mortis, which means civilly dead in the view of the law. The condition of one who has lost his civil rights and capacities and is accounted dead in the law. You see what I'm saying? And then, it's funny when the term that we all gravitate to today, in terms of identifying ourselves, I really hate using it because, of course, I study a lot about the Moors, who we really are, and when we say Black, and we understand that in the dictionary, they don't even list it as a noun, it's listed as an adjective. Being the color Black, producing, reflecting comparatively little light and having no predominant hue, of or belonging to a racial group having brown to black skin, especially of African origin. Evil, sinister, cheerless, depressing. Black lives don't matter because Black itself, when we identify that instead of claiming our own nationality, we're not even a real people. But the flip side is, if you look at, how they define white, the first thing you'll notice is that it's not described as an adjective. It is identified, right? We're back to identification as a noun. And then and they're talking about the achromatic color of maximum lightness, the color of objects that reflect nearly all light of all visible wavelengths, the complement or antagonist of Black. They get into games and talking about the white or light colored pieces, as in chess, and actually they even call the player playing these games using the pieces, as white. And then we look at, games like the archery that they have, you have all the colors surrounding the target. I'm going to get Martin Lawrence on you in Boomerang, right? But in the middle is that black dot, the bullseye, what you're aiming for. And that's where you get the most points for, is hitting that black dot. You know what I'm saying? So, but they also tell you who they are too, when they say, they're in some European countries, devoid of hue, weakly colored, almost colorless, pale, bloodless, blanched, typically of Caucasoid origins. You see what I'm saying? So, words really do matter at the end of the day, and again, I hate that the term, change, but even though it's changed, it's still similar. It's just that when you're looking at it from the vantage point of, so-called Black versus, so-called white, we're just looking at these different because there's different, things within our culture that we're applying to be relevant, important, and significant. Like in our community today, I remember when the sisters first started gravitating, and being okay with homosexuality. Back in the day, man, that was like, man, we call that a white man thing. I'm saying? That's white people shit, we call it. I'm saying? That was, but today is way more associated with us, to me, unfortunately, because, it's the last thing I believe our community really needs. We need, strong men, we need fathers, nuclear families and whatnot, that would help, make us stronger, and that's just the opposite of what we have and what's being promoted to us, in particular from the Democrat Party. So again, I appreciate this conversation we had on wokeness. Is there anything else you guys want to add?
I would say that I would say that the far extreme liberals, because I don't think the Democrats are against, men in the household type situation, but I do think they're inclusive of households that don't include that. So it's like what you're saying is true, but I don't want to say that is literally painting it and saying that that's what they think is the ideal thing. They're just saying that we are embracing that thing too. Right. But I understand your position, and your position is not terribly far from mine. So I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
But no, it sounds like we covered everything. Are you about to say something?
Yeah. The only thing I was going to say is that the world we live in is a melting pot. I think like I said, as I have stressed a couple of times, everybody deserves a seat at the table. I think wherever you kind of fall in like how you've been socialized, you may feel one is more glaring than the other. I work with a lot of people who are gay and lesbian, you name it, and they're absolutely tremendous people. What they do in their house really doesn't apply to me and vice versa. I think my mindset is always in regards to what can we do to one, make sure that we do have proper representation, and two, making sure that we can try to work towards getting along and being better to one another. That will always be the foundation of how I think about everything.
That's up. So
well said, sir. Well said.
So if that's going to tune it up, so, that's going to be the end of this episode of Sunday School. It'll probably at least be the first Saturday every month, in the slot. We're spin that back when El Poo can't do what he does, and with an option to be at any other time and any other moment. So you never know when the Sunday School might drop down. The name will probably change too, because it's not Sunday. But that having been said, we want to thank you to all the viewers and those that catch us live, those that catch us on replay, subscribe, like, and share. Thank you very much. Thank you very Victor Vigilante Freeman, Brother Charles X, and peace out.
Peace out.
Network.
All right. Thank you, brothers. I appreciate it.
Thank you, man.